So, Wes, I'll start with you first. I'm interested because you're playing a character who is a bit more enlightened than she like to believe, a bit more, on the progressive end of things, especially thinking the period of time at which we were in, someone you meet someone like her now, but like back then, may have been like a little bit more of an anomaly. So how do you think your character specifically kind of throughout the series reckons with, her own thoughts and her own beliefs versus that of which the environment that she's kind of placed in?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what I loved most about Allison was her curiosity. And I think, she comes from a place of such privilege and she's kind of suffocated by it and a little ashamed of it. And I think just this desire to learn more and to break out of it and to be more enlightened is honorable. But at the same time, you continuously see the ways in which her privilege and her ignorance kind of blinds her to the reality of the situation. Mm-hmm. I always love the exchange with Edwin when Allison brings up the tooth fairy, and she's like, I believed in the tooth fairy, and Edwin's like, the one that leaves money under your pillow. So there's a level of unawareness there too, but I think her intentions are good.
Yes. And Jayden, for you, not to go into any spoilers, because this series does have twists and turns, but one of the most compelling dynamics in relationships within this show is the one between Edwin and Gogo, of course. What was it like, kind of developing this, these characters' relationships and how it, changes and morphs between different things throughout the entire course of this show?
It was great working with Josh Bonzie, who plays Gogo, was great. He's always so down and like immensely committed to anything he does. And so a lot of what Edwin and Gogo's dynamic is something that we had in our dynamic, and I think we extrapolated from in the boundaries of the scene. But also, I think we all kind of know, again, without going into too many spoilers, we all kind of know people who have the dichotomy of what Edwin is going through. And that's such a heavy loaded thing to be carrying and subtext to be playing with. So that adds such like an electricity anytime we'd be doing a scene. So much subtext to dig into. It was so fun.
Yeah. You and Josh gave such similar answers. I asked him the same thing, and then he started talking. He was like, without giving any spoilers away.
Yeah, there's so much, as you know.
Yes, it's hard. So it's hard. But thank you both so much for chatting with me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm just ready to binge the series again because now now that I know what happens at the end, I have to rewatch it to have that lens on the series because like there were some things in the series and I was like, it would stick out and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. But then like knowing everything at the end, I'm like, okay, I need to like do this all over again. But yes. Well, thank you both so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Alycia, I'll start with you first because your character, Emily, she kind of always goes against what other people think that she should be doing many times throughout this series, kind of using her own judgment as opposed to everyone else's. Why do you think the character is like, we know that she went through this traumatic experience where she lost her sister, but her in the present day being so engrossed in this case, and do you think it's not only to kind of like, one, get justice for her sister, but also what do you think is actually going through her mind at the time for herself when she's, doing all this investigative work on her own?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was so attracted to this character because it was sort of a deep dive into a fractured character. These two versions of a person, young Claire and then adult Emily. This, the same person who experienced such a trauma and what that trauma does to a person. And as you said, is as much of a, investigative experience for her trying to figure out what actually happened to her sister. But at the same time, I think it's an exploration into who she is and what she left behind when that traumatic experience happened, and what then roles she's had to fulfill within her family, fill a void of in her family when her sister left, died. She sort of became a version of her sister to survive, but also, for her family to feel whole again in a sense. And so I think with this, this fateful encounter, it's led her to question a lot about actually who she is as a person. So a lot of this quest is her, trying to determine like who she is.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And Josh, for you, when you're thinking about our main four group of characters, you're the only actor that remains both present in the former timeline and the current timeline. So how is that being able to play the same character years later, and then also, bring to life this character on screen who has gone through so much and is still reckoning with so much that took place so many years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. It's every actor's dream to get to sort of play all the intricacies, the human psyche, and I get to show the range of a human being and what human behavior. And so I think the first thing was just figuring out, the specifics of each timeline. How does he feel about life and everything here, and then how does he feel about it all these years later after going through such a profound traumatic event. And so sort of just finding where those places live in me, Josh, and then kind of marrying those to the character. That's kind of how I approach the work.
Yes, yes. And also I think that, not to give anything away about the series, but as the series goes on, we learn so much more about the characters. And one of the I guess the most compelling dynamics throughout this series is this bond that we see between Edwin and Gogo and how that transforms over time, their relationship. And I think that it's so interesting to see how that the bond they have and how that impacts him so many years later. So what was it like also crafting, this relationship that also kind of sticks throughout time as well?
Yeah, I had to figure out for myself what it meant to really be betrayed by someone you trust so much. Not to give anything away, but but what is that? How does this relationship change over time? And how does that, what does that do to a person? Like, where does this live in him, and how physically, how does he feel about this? So that was really my key into figuring out his relationship with Edwin.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you both so much for chatting with me. I need to binge the show again so now I can watch it with the lens of knowing what happens at the end and have that lens going into everything, because I know I'm going to pick up on so much more. Because there were certain things I was like, okay, it stuck out at the time and I didn't realize things that would have so much more meaning until later on. I had to revisit it for that aspect. But thank you both so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much. It was really lovely talking to you.